Hello and welcome to episode 28 of Long Shots, our weekly podcast. Fun thing, Sharad, today is 28th of March. This is episode 28.
Oh, really?
What a classy numeric joke
Yeah.
to start off this week's session.
What would make it funnier if you say this happens once in every 1,000 years?
I don't know, man. I'll have to kind of figure that part out.
Yeah. All these fake stuff usually come on WhatsApp. There's something like that, and they say like this happens once in 1,000 years, once in a million years.
Yeah,
And there's no premise to it at all. It's just random garbage.
I mean, there was actually, frankly, no premise to my 28 observation as well. What had happened was that I'm always struggling to find a unique opener.
Yeah.
And I just looked at my system and I saw the date at bottom right. And I was like, oh, episode 28 on 28th of March. Let's say something about it.
Yeah. Well done.
Well done, yeah. So noted and dusted and gone.
Yeah.
Never to come again. Well, on that's a rather different note to start.
Yeah.
And usual disclaimers to all our listeners. We are streaming on various apps, your favorite ones, hopefully iTunes, Deezer, Spotify, Google Podcasts. So do search for Long Shots and hit subscribe so that you get that nice notification every time an episode goes live. And not live.
Yeah.
And this is Nikhil Arora and I have with me Sharad Tupran. So Sharad, today let's kind of start with the most I would say academic or cerebral or eclectic, I don't know what's the word, esoteric topic, and then gradually dilute ourselves towards Apple. How about that?
It's funny that you talked about or brought about Apple using superlatives.
Yes.
It's a circularity there.
Yes, that's correct. But yeah, so I mean, Apple probably would be the most fun topic today, but would probably like to start with something a bit more serious and something close to my heart personally, because I think I've also talked about it earlier.
Sure.
Shaktikanta Das, the career bureaucrat converted RBI governor, came up with some good news this week. He announced that RBI would soon issue guidelines on a regulatory sandbox, quote-unquote, framework for fintech companies, I think in the next 2 months.
Yeah.
And that's something that I felt was long due.
Yeah, and I remember you'd written about it and you sort of talked about it as well, and especially in context of fintech and what it does to the overall evolution.
Yeah.
So you must be thrilled about it.
I am. And the reason is that, the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK, they pretty much pioneered the concept of a regulatory sandbox.
So you had a close look at them while you were
while it was happening there. So I used to often feel that why don't we have something similar here? And I think this conversation has been going on for some time. I think the piece I wrote was in April 2018.
Yeah.
Where I think at that time RBI was still in consultation mode, putting this sandbox concept into its discussions. But yeah, around a few more months down the line, now we're in 2019, early March. So I mean, yeah, almost a year. Seems like something is in the motion. So yeah, I think, considering India is right now such a lucrative market for fintech, be it digital lending, be it payments, be it cryptocurrencies, and considering the Reserve Bank of India and pretty much any Indian regulator's long background of being a fairly, ham-fisted or harsh regulator.
Yeah.
This is good. This is good stuff.
Yeah. So let's sort of dig a little deeper, just a little bit. So sort of emerging fintech companies, or let's call it technology companies, irrespective whether they have a massive financial wealth or not, probably more financial, but they're sort of, is that the right way to think about it, that they're sort of cut some slack from a legal standpoint because they're still discovering what works and what not?
Yeah.
So there is a time period until which they can sort of play in this gray area.
I guess those terms will kind of come out in the guidelines.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the main idea, that fintech is pretty much a combination of banking and finance, which are relatively conservative, highly regulated sectors, and technology, which is pretty much, much more, I would say, quote unquote, innovative and freewheeling. So because of that, often fintech companies and new business models come on the wrong side of existing rules.
Yeah.
And a sandbox is supposed to protect them against it by giving such companies some sort of a transitional status.
Yeah.
So if you recall, I think it was early last year when one fine day the Reserve Bank had announced that all cryptocurrency players, all banks and financial services companies need to withdraw their relationships with cryptocurrency companies.
Yeah.
So that was like a blunt force announcement, because of which I don't know how many cryptocurrency startups went out of business.
Yeah.
Right. And similarly, I think it was last year only when with companies like Paytm, payments companies, there was suddenly like an announcement that all of them need to get end-to-end KYC done.
Yeah.
Because of which I think there was a lot of churn.
Yeah.
Which happened. So the thing is that things like KYC, they are rules which are designed for traditional banks. So suddenly putting that kind of a framework on a payments company can be very harmful for those business models.
Yeah.
So if there is a sandbox, if there would have been a sandbox at that time, for instance, then these companies would have been given a special, unique status for safe space, exactly, where they could do what they want, preferably to a beta set of users, and RBI is not going to kind of put them out of business overnight.
Yeah, and that's so important for evolution. You can't sort of make laws, and it's like trying to put square pegs in round holes, right?
Correct.
At the end, like you want to see where the market evolves or how tech evolves, and then build laws around it. You can't sort of expect evolution under the confinement of.
I mean, and that kind of there's a circularity there,
Yeah.
right? Because it's very challenging for regulations to catch up with the tech in the first place. So it's always going to be the tech is going to come forward.
Agreed,
and
yeah.
regulator would have to catch up.
Yeah.
And so that is unavoidable. So might as well give some sort of a transitional space. The most interesting thing was I remember when in the peer-to-peer lending space, right?
Yeah.
Where effectively you want to lend some money, I want to borrow some money, a platform comes into the picture and connects both of us. That was like the clean-cut definition of peer-to-peer, right? And most peer-to-peer companies over time do diversify into underwriting themselves, because that's where the juicy net interest income comes in. So I recall when P2P had just entered India, one fine day, RBI came up with the guidelines saying that, now you need to have like 2 crores of equity, you need to become an NBFC and so on and so forth. Again, very, very harsh requirements. I think they were kind of partly influenced by the experience in China, because in China, P2P kind of mushroomed into this big, I would say, shadow banking sector, say. So, but yeah, though that was again a very, that was like inducing blunt force trauma. So these kind of complexities can be managed in a much more staggered manner through a regulatory sandbox. And during the duration of the sandbox, you can basically be in regular consultation with the companies, with founders, with industry at large, get their views, refine the rules, and then come up with a final guideline, rather than 5 people sitting in the room drafting something.
Yeah, that makes no sense. Yeah, no, this is good then, and definitely a catalyst, if you will, or at least a removal of an impediment, if anything.
I mean, I just hope the guidelines of the regulatory sandbox are kind of reasonable, because sometimes
I hope. I mean, I would expect so. I mean, yeah. I mean, let's see. Let's hope, I guess. But to call it a regulatory sandbox and then come up with something which is not at all friendly would be like counterintuitive and counterproductive. So let's see. But I think overall, I think that this is positive, right, for evolution and innovation.
I mean, they don't have to reinvent the wheel. Plenty of countries are already doing that.
Yeah.
So I mean, there is reasonable amount of precedent.
Yeah.
I mean, in UK, in US,
steal a page from their book.
You should do that, right?
Yeah.
Because these models have been tested at other places. So hopefully they do that and take it forward. So that I think was kind of good news for me personally.
And on the domestic front as well.
Yeah, on the domestic front. On the international front, I think this week was also a rehash of a theme that you touched upon some time back. The ever dreadful inverted yield curve in the US.
Yeah, flattening to inversion. Now it's inverted.
Right.
It's you and I both have read about it and understand it fairly well. It's a sort of slightly, somewhat, let's call it complicated field in stock market or corporate finance.
Right.
But I mean, it's succinctly, to summarize, the 3 months, 10-year bond yields have sort of inverted. What that means is that when basically yield spread is basically the difference between a yield of a 3-month bond and a 10-year bond.
Right.
And when it's inverted, it means that 3-month yield has overshot or is higher than a 10-year bond, which is a rare thing. And almost always it sort of predicts.
So it's almost like investors are demanding a higher interest rate on short term rather than long term, right?
That's exactly it. And that's been a sign that almost always has predicted a recession.
Right.
This is the first time that this inversion has happened since 2007.
Right.
We know what that followed, what that led into. So markets obviously are closely watching and are feeling the pressures. Markets are sort of falling off and tapering, and obviously there are other macroeconomic factors, be it from Brexit and whatnot. But this is a sign that is being closely watched. There's so many schools of thought in correlation versus causation. Some people say that it because the US has been engaged in quantitative easing and now they're sort of raising rates, so there is an effect of that, so you can't really read too much into this.
Okay.
Some say that flattening yield curve and inverted yield curve are telltale signs that it lead to in recession. Some say there's a time lag though of 2 years.
Right.
Some say it's 1 year. So it's a lot of it is conjecture and speculation, but it is still alarming. And the markets are still reacting. Those are facts. That is the truth.
Right.
And when markets react, things don't always move rationally, right? And
correct.
there's only real life is not the textbook. Real life consists of actual market participants who have different biases and preferences and different schools of thought. So let's see how that plays out.
So basically, I think for the benefit of the listeners as well, because I think this is a fairly technical topic.
Yeah.
So essentially what we're looking at it is like a yield curve is basically a graph which shows the yield versus the maturity of a bond.
Correct. It's just a graph which plots, like you said, yields and dates.
Yeah. So basically, and yield being some sort of a proxy for the interest rate or the coupon, right?
Yeah.
So essentially what's happening is that when the US Treasury is borrowing money, it is borrowing money for a certain duration of time and it is yielding some sort of a coupon or interest on it.
Yeah.
So if the bond prices fall, the yield goes up.
Correct. That's exactly it.
So effectively, I would say wisdom would be that if you want to borrow for a longer duration, you need to pay a higher interest.
Yeah.
So that's why a traditional yield curve would be upward sloping.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's called the normal yield curve.
Yeah, the normal.
Where long-term yields are higher than short-term yields.
Correct.
And that's sort of status quo, normal, non-alarming.
So now what's happening is that the shorter term side of the curve is now going up and the longer is kind of going down.
Yeah, and you can sort of mentally see that it's flattening.
It's flattening and probably inverting as well.
Yeah, now it's inverted. It's negative 5 basis points as of last I checked.
So the thing is that if US government today wants to borrow for a 3-month period, they probably would have to give a higher interest rate versus if they have to borrow for a 10-year period.
Yeah.
That's bizarre, right?
Yeah, that's bizarre.
And that's, I think, what kind of scares people. That investors are just so apprehensive of lending even for 3 months.
Yeah, for short term, and sort of maybe they're even predicting that there'll be a rate fall that will come soon, which sort of says that maybe the economy will sort of struggle.
Right.
Generally, a flattening yield curve can happen when sort of Fed increases the rates when they think that economy is overheating anyway, which has happened in recent time.
Right.
But inversion is still a rare thing.
Inversion is still a rare thing. Correct.
And I think in the US's history, there have only been 2 false positives when it comes to yield curve inversion.
Right.
One was 1966.
Okay.
Where it inverted but nothing happened. And one was 1998 when it flattened but nothing meaningful happened soon after.
Right.
But every time else it has called it. So let's see. And
but the interesting thing also is that I think this 3-month versus 10-year inversion.
Yeah.
This happened now, like around March 2019. But I think it was December when that was I think the time you had written a piece on it, that the 2-3 year yield had exceeded the 5-year one.
Yeah.
So it's been kind of the theme for the past 3 to 4 months.
Yeah, it has. Flattening has been talked about. Inversion has been talked about at different time periods and different bonds.
Because I remember reading that CNBC TV 18 article, I think I shared with you also, where they said that, it's the first time since 2007 that yields have flattened for 3 month versus 10 year. And then I recall reading in December, it was again, it's the first time since 2007 that yields have flattened for 2 year and 3 year versus 5 year. I mean, they both kind of
say the same thing.
say the same thing, right? I mean, it's kind of an underlying theme.
Yeah, no, it has happened, and this is probably 3 month tenure is as diverse as you can get, short term and long term. So it sort of captures the extremes. So let's see. I mean, I think there is a popular narrative out there that there's a recession coming and the market is overheated and there's overvaluation, and it's hard. Like, I know in hindsight, everyone will say that the telltale signs were there.
It's very difficult to time it. That's the problem.
Absolutely,
it's impossible to time it.
I mean, I like Raghuram Rajan, and he's widely credited for calling 08 crisis as well. And right now also, I remember 2011, he said recession coming, 12, 13, 14. He's been saying that for the past 5-6 years, recession's coming. Obviously, he will be right sometime. And he's been saying that again now. Let's say we hit a recession next year.
It's an easy thing to say.
Yeah. And if a recession comes next year, then everyone will say, oh, Raghuram Rajan called the recession. But he's been calling it for the last 5 years. Nothing has happened.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's easy to say that something is happening when you know it will happen. Yeah. If I'd really like it if he says that this is the year when then it will happen, then there is something to it. Otherwise...
That's more astrology, I think.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I mean... Then it becomes astrology, right? It's difficult to you kind of know the structural, you might be able to call on the structural issues, but like actually timing it, saying that...
That's the thing, right? Yeah. I mean, that's what traders and investors are compensated for anyway, for getting the timing right. A part of it, at least.
I mean, they get compensated for it. I don't know how much they also know, but I mean, it's kind of you ride the wave, right? You ride the wave.
Ride the curve.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's why do you, like you said, that the reason why inversion might also happen is because the Fed is increasing rates.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So the main idea is because Fed controls short-term interest rates.
Correct.
So that just has a direct effect.
Direct impact.
And it takes some time for it to get translated, right? Okay.
So there is an external push as well, right?
Because I think Fed has been... for the past, I don't know, almost 12 months, 18 months, that constant, rate increase has been going on.
Since 2015, they've hiked the rate 9 times.
9 times.
Since 2015. Right. So yes, you're right. There is a general cadence of upward sloping short-term rates which are externally stimulated by the Fed. Yes, that is a factor.
Right.
But it's still, I just feel like inversion still is not entirely driven by this. There are other factors. There is market fear for sure.
Right. I think a lot of these, kind of external factors also have a role to play, like you're saying Brexit or, like uncertainty at a global level sometimes feeds in as a noise.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, because at the fundamental level, if you see that, I mean, most businesses are kind of glee with the corporate tax benefit that Trump gave them, right?
Yeah.
And, I mean, they're kind of in that comfort zone as well. So I'm pretty sure if you ask a CEO in the US, he won't say that things are going
good.
Things are good.
Yeah.
Right. So it also depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah, I think US is supposed to release GDP numbers this week.
Oh, yeah.
That will be another catalyst. Quite a few rich countries actually are doing it. I think Canada, Australia, maybe even France.
This week, you mean like it's tomorrow?
Thursday, today, maybe US time. So I guess we'll have to wait till Friday, tomorrow morning for us. Right. But I think it's Thursday, I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, those are, I think market is closely eyeing every possible catalyst right now.
Right.
Especially when the yield curve is inverting, they will look for external catalysts like Brexit and things like that. And any kind of sign of positivity would be taken very positively.
I mean, that's the problem, right? I mean, I don't buy that. I really don't think Brexit has any effect on anything. I mean, that causation correlation thing. I mean, you obviously reiterate that you're a firm believer that it's not equivalent. I get it, it's not equivalent, but I mean, it's so tempting for commentators to just pick something and link it to something else, right? I mean, there's no straight away linkage.
Yeah.
I mean, anyways, that's the way it is, right? You are. That's why I think I prefer astrologers. I mean, at least they are kind of point blank in saying that, right? I mean, this is some celestial factor here rather than something we actually understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, did you? We obviously had discussed a lot about the US economy. Now let's go to the concluding part of our podcast and talk about the most valuable or the second most valuable US company. I don't know, Apple.
Yeah,
they had a kind of keynote event this week where Oprah Winfrey shouted on the stage or something like that.
I find it too bizarre, dude. Out there, events are way too bizarre now. And keynote event, you say, do they have a non-keynote event ever?
Everything is keynote.
Everything is keynote.
Everything is keynote. Everything is gorgeous, brilliant, and everything is. I mean, Apple has, I think, it's the marketing part of Apple is now so big.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just difficult to ignore that, right? I mean, in this keynote, they brought Spielberg, they brought, no, not bought. I mean, I don't know if they brought, but they brought
Yeah.
Steve Carell, Reese Witherspoon, and you know that guy who plays Aquaman. I don't know.
I don't know,
the
dude.
big guy. I mean,
Whoever,
anyways,
yeah.
Jason Momoa or something
Okay.
like that, right?
Yeah.
He was there on stage. Everybody was like going gaga about, how brilliant.
And that's what they thrive on, like
Yeah.
simple little things people going. And I've read that willing to invest $1 billion in content.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
Okay.
Netflix invests 6 to 8. Amazon invests like
1 million is the number.
1 billion is.
So what was the keynote like? It was. I know it's focused on services. So
Yeah.
they introduced 3 or 4 new things.
Yeah, like services, right? I mean, I don't know how many times they use the word, but services. Obviously, they're feeling the pressure of.
So services is basically now the fastest growing segment in the Apple revenue split.
Correct.
And I think it's still 15% of the revenues. It's not the biggest chunk.
Yeah.
Biggest chunk is still iPhones.
It's
but
just the fastest growing.
it's
Yeah.
the fastest growing. iPhones are pretty much slowing down.
Yeah,
People own phones for a longer duration. They are not switching, flipping, and all those things.
Yeah.
So they are now kind of pivoting towards services in a big way.
Yeah.
So in this keynote, I think they were obviously Apple TV Plus is one. That's
yeah.
the,
So I think 4 pieces, right? I mean, Apple TV Plus was one. Apple News Plus was one.
Right.
I think there was a credit card that you did a little bit of research on as
Apple
well.
Card.
Apple Card, and then there was one more.
Apple Arcade.
Apple Games, yeah.
the
Apple
gaming.
Arcade. Yeah, so let's briefly touch on each one of those, and let's start with Apple TV Plus.
Yeah.
It's content, an area that I really like.
So Apple TV is already a thing, right?
Yeah, Apple TV is already a thing, and they've now launched.
So that's a box.
Yeah.
That's a hardware box, which kind of I think that is pretty much like a hardware to aggregate, HBO, Showtime,
Yeah.
all the, I won't say original programming, but third party programming.
Yeah, and this Apple TV Plus itself will also be doing that. I think they will be creating premium content.
So that's
plus at the
original
same time
programming.
distributor of existing channels as well, like HBO and all.
Right.
In fact, I remember Reed Hastings / Netflix saying that they won't ride on that. They don't want to be on that platform, which makes sense to me for whatever reasons. But that's another topic. But so Apple TV will be creating premium content, but also act as a distributor for channels such as HBO and other pay TV channels. And the US pay TV / SWOD / MVPD or overall content ecosystem is very rich with so many moving pieces.
Right.
Historically, guys like AT&T and Dish with their own cable boxes have done, created, let's call it a moat around them,
Right.
which has severely come under threat recently via cable cutting and whatnot, and over-the-top providers like Netflix, and even sporting somewhat going over the top, at least partially, with Amazon Prime, with an NFL deal and all. So obviously there's a big piece in the content ecosystem, which that everyone's just figuring it out, and just so many players now. It's, in 2018, there were 496 scripted original series that were launched.
Right.
496 in 1 year,
Right.
all original. So original programming clearly is a subscriber acquisition tool, which all of them subscribe to. And Apple obviously wants to get into it. I think they've earmarked $1 billion in content spent for the year,
Which you
I
said
think
is not a lot.
I mean, look at what Netflix is doing. They're very clear on. I think last year was 6 billion. This year is going to be 8 billion.
Right.
In just original programming. Amazon Prime is not too far behind. Easily 4-5 billion, I think. These guys are doing 1 billion. I mean, for me, I'm thinking, what if your show doesn't take off? When you content is not easy in the sense that the risk profile has to be captured somewhere.
Right.
Now, I understand that going to services sort of de-risks in a sense that you have more stable recurring revenue kind of a thing, which investors typically tend to like. But content is stable recurring only after you show demonstrated success of unleashing good shows one after the other, right? So let's see how they manage that.
I think it's mainly just a tool by which they are retaining people on the iPhone
Ecosystem.
Apple ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if you're an iPhone or an iPad owner, nobody's stopping you from watching Netflix, right?
Correct, yeah.
But if you have Apple TV Plus, it just kind of locks you in that. And that's I think an industry term now, like a garden of Apple, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you change from one device to another. You pause the thing on one device, you go on the other. It's pretty much starts from there.
Yeah.
All that kind of seamless transition. And I mean, I've seen myself, I think, get trapped into it temporarily. I mean, there was a time when I had an iPhone and iPad, and I don't know, I used to kind of really switch between each other. And I mean, I'm not a MacBook owner.
Yeah.
But I've heard like a lot of people who would own like a MacBook Air and iPhone, they swear by it. They're just not ready to try anything different.
Yeah.
So I think this is like another kind of, I mean, Apple can definitely afford to spend more than $1 billion. Right? Way more, right? So probably this is some sort of a conscious move that, okay, let's put our foot in that door of content as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we already have a thriving ecosystem, of iMessenger, of iTunes, of the App Store, of the hardware device itself. So yeah, content is just another layer on top of that.
Yeah.
And that's why they are just focusing on locking these high profile names, like these big Hollywood A-listers.
Spielbergs of the world.
Yeah. So I think that probably might be their thinking. No detail on the pricing, right?
No, I did not see any detail on the pricing. Which sort of, when we speaking about content and pricing, the next thing that they did was Apple News Plus.
Right.
That had a pricing.
Yeah.
And obviously content, but different kinds. You and I both sort of understand that ecosystem fairly well.
Right.
The news distribution ecosystem.
Yeah, that's correct.
So yeah, Apple News. I think there were 300 plus magazines and newspapers on the platform, charging $9.99, $9.99 US.
Right.
I was reading somewhere that market rumor says that they've gone in with a 50-50 rev split with the publishers.
Yes.
But also dependent on reading patterns. So I don't know how it how the math will unfold.
So I mean, it's pretty much an aggregator, right? Yeah. And I think there's a curation element in Apple News Plus, which is manual. I remember that that's how they put it. But it's basically the curation is still pointing to the original news content.
Correct.
Right. And but I mean, I wonder, like $9.99. That's the pricing, right? If I recall, $9.99.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So $9.99. I mean, and they have got some high profile names, right? They've got like Wall Street Journal and LA Times. Yeah. I mean. I don't know how much. I don't think it's going to be like a money minting machine.
Yeah, no, So Wall Street Journal, I mean, that's probably the biggest name out there in terms of at least what they charge. I mean, Wall Street Journal is $39 US per month alone.
So if suppose we assume that Wall Street Journal, like, I don't know, has some sort of a 50% rev share, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that how it's going?
Yeah, I think so. And they've not disclosed the revenue models, but market speculation is that they've got a rev share model with the publishers.
Right.
And so I mean, the math doesn't work out like that. But
how would it, right? Because the $9.99 is for 300, right?
Yeah, so it's like you said, like $39, right? So Wall Street Journal, it's interesting. Like I was reading on Wall Street Journal, and they were saying that the news that they're going to be distributing over Apple News Plus is going to be very general politics, leisure kind of news, and there will be only very specific business and financial news which appeal to the general reader, quote unquote.
Correct.
But their core content or whatever the main serious stuff will still be discoverable, but they will use it as a sort of tool to probably get them onto the platform and if at all, maybe even use it as a discovery. And it's funny that they're sort of being very, and it makes sense from Wall Street Journal standpoint, but I found it really funny that when you look at the Apple's website or marketing material, which I think I stumbled upon a tweet or something, and there they had sort of said Wall Street Journal is leading business and finance, which is true, but they're not giving that content. They're giving like the one that they're not that known for, if you will. So no, it's like it's a revenue. Let's see how that plays out.
I mean, I think WSJ would obviously be very specific on the terms of the partnership, right? I mean, it also, there are other factors, right? Like how many days of archive material is accessible to
that's a good point.
Apple, right? As you said, Apple News Plus would be a discovery tool. So if suppose someone wants to, if someone already knows what to search for, then it can be used. But whether it would have all the content of a particular publication extensively laid out like on their own app, no, right? So that kind. But I don't know. How much of if suppose I am a business, it kind of makes a difference, right? If I am a reader, right, and I'm getting $9.99 service where I can see a few articles. I'm definitely, Apple is surely not aiming for the power news reader.
Oh yeah, and there is a big non-power user base as well.
Correct.
Right?
So I guess for Wall Street Journal, it's a customer acquisition strategy to get that non-light user in.
Yeah.
And for Apple, basically that light user is the core.
Yeah.
So
I think that's well put. I think that's exactly what it is.
Right.
And the last two things were the card. Like the card is fairly interesting.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts around that? I mean, I just read like, is that.
So yeah, it's basically they've done a partnership with Goldman Sachs and Mastercard. I guess Mastercard would act as the interchange network, and Goldman Sachs would provide the underwriting.
Do you think a Goldman Sachs equity researcher will ever put a hold or a sell on Apple now?
I actually don't think they are very pleased. I mean, I was reading a bit of coverage on GS's own research view on this particular product, and I don't think they were going gaga about it.
That's good. More compensation.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So the way that it works is that they're actually making a physical card. And it's made of obviously some space satellite material.
And it looks good and comes in space gray and black and white.
Yeah, it's some high grade titanium in case you want to break someone's head with it. I don't know. So yeah, it's and obviously it's like machine crafted to the core. Yeah. You can find those videos where how Apple's logo is etched on that titanium surface. So yeah, there's a card.
Yeah,
they made a lot of hue and cry about the privacy aspect of the credit card.
Yeah,
there's no fee. The credit card number is not visible on the physical card, and the main idea is that it gets integrated in your Apple Wallet, right? And you get cash back.
Yeah,
and obviously you get funky analytics on how you are spending. That's pretty much it. Again, I think it's a ecosystem retention move. So now you use your phone to pay. You use your phone for your entertainment. I mean, and Apple wants to just put their feet in everything. I mean, since there's no credit card fee, I guess the revenue model will be much more based on whatever the issuing and the acquiring bank makes as a transaction commission, and GS makes money on interest rate, right? That probably must be the revenue model here.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Ostentatious card, but nonetheless. And the final product being Arcade.
Arcade, yeah, don't know much about it actually. To be fair, I mean, I think there are around 100+ games which are included in the Arcade universe. I mean, I think what I was, I keep on following the YouTube videos of those guys, MKHD and Unbox Therapy. I don't know, those are YouTube channels which talk a lot about latest in tech. So on Unbox Therapy, that guy, he was saying that probably Arcade is being aimed not at the power game users, because they don't really have names like Fortnite or PUBG, those kind
core
of
games.
They don't have core gaming content.
Yeah,
they actually have gaming content for the light user again, who just wants to do something when they're in their commute. You can play offline. Again, it's interesting because this is coming parallel to Google entering the gaming universe through Stadia
via streaming.
So they are kind of using YouTube as a vehicle to enter gaming, and Apple is doing the same thing in its own ecosystem. So I think listen, the thing is that without pricing data and without at least a few months of trading activity with these products out, it's difficult to say how lucrative they are. I would think that Apple is viewing these more as marketing spend to just retain more and more customers within the ecosystem, so that because iPhone sales are dropping, so they don't have much of a choice.
And let's see how the next event comes along and what kind of traction they get on all these products. Will be interesting to watch, obviously, and irrespective of what happens, we are sure that it will be magnificent and wonderful and nice and extraordinary. But no, it was a good chat. I thoroughly enjoyed talking about wide-ranging stuff from core equity markets and let's call it bond markets to tech shops and regulatory sandbox.
Correct. Yeah. So with that, I think that's a good way to summarize. And look forward to the coming week, and would obviously invite all our listeners to share your feedback either through comments or through your ratings, and make this podcast better every week. So and with that, I would say let's sign it off. This is Nikhil Arora,
and this is Sharat Tupran
signing off.